بوكسيو أنويرو هدى علي أحمد أو وكتر هذا صون اللويسة محمد حسن انتي نبغى نتقال محمد عثمان قاب وحنقول رسول يهودا إن أي هكذا زوج يستاهل سيا أترى هذا بالقفك ويا هاي محمد حسن هذا ويلكم.
Mohamed Hassan is an Ogaden Canadian whose research interest lies in the Ogaden issue. He is an information security professional by trade. He holds a BS in computer science from Boston University and an MS in information assurance from Norwich University in Vermont. He is an adjunct professor at the University of Phoenix. He is also a researcher and one of the founding members of the Canadian Center for Ogaden Research and Advocacy, a not-for-profit research and advocacy organization. Morals and the perpetration of the Ogaden tragedy. Please welcome him onto the stage.
Has a title of a minister, but that is not significant when you look at the share of that society in Ethiopia. Okay. And finally, up to the present day, although Ethiopia claims that those people are part of Ethiopia, but they still trade with the Somali nation. Although there's no Somali government at the moment, or sorry, there hasn't been a functioning government for the last 20-something years, except the transitional government the last couple of years. So they still trade with the Somali nation, not by their choice. In fact, when you look at the geography, it's better for them to trade with the rest of the other communities in what's not today present-day Ethiopia, but they are still forced to trade with the Somalia. So this is who the Ogaden people are. So we are clear that we know who we're not talking about, and we know who we're talking about. So what exactly happened in 1892? What was then the British Protectorate, or the consul, for that area, which Ogaden included, he sent a report. I like the English people. You know why? They're very good at documenting everything they see, even if they don't agree with. And that is a great quality in a human being to have. So he wrote a report. He described in vivid description what exactly was happening in the Ogaden. What exactly did he say? You read that. Abyssinia means that is the Amhara and the Tigray, and those two communities at the time were called Abyssinians, and there was no Ethiopia. It's a modern day creation. So what he is reporting is there has been an expedition. The Abyssinians went for days looking for something to kill, to plunder, anything. That's at the time they call expedition. They returned from the Ogaden, bringing with them as a booty thousands of camels, cattle, and property of all descriptions. I hear from other sources that they have devastated the people. When you look at the next slide, you will see why. 1892, the words may be different, but the scenes is everything the same. Okay? He didn't stop there. He said, people are dying of starvation. Do you hear about the famine in Ogaden today? 2 years ago, there was a famine. Exactly, that's what that famine is. That's why we call it a man-made. Okay? They're dying of starvation, and an epidemic that is said to be cholera, but it's starvation fever. People have nothing to eat. So what are they going to do? They finally find, okay, water that is boiling. They drink it. They have diarrhea. That's what a cholera is. Okay? And finally, in his report, he said, who has done this? That's exactly on the record. If you look up, you will find that record in any school library. And that was 1892. The Ethiopian or Abyssinian soldiers have done that. Okay? Now, what I call the West, I forgot to mention the West, the term West have changed because I will extend it to mean the British when the British was where the United States is today. So that's what I'm calling, what is the Western's response. They have willfully neglected the very people, the Ogaden, it had legal and moral authority to defend. At the time, what happened was the Ogaden Somalis had a binding legal agreement that the British will protect them. That's why it was called British Protectorate. In return, they will do fine, and they're not going to harm the British interests. So it was a tit for tat. Now that although they had a legal responsibility to protect them, they did not. Instead, what have they done? Guess what? Instead of stopping what their own consul have said or reported, they signed 5 years later what is today in the literature, what is known as the Anglo-Ethiopian Treaty of 1997. That is when officially the British have handed over the Ogaden and other parts of Ethiopia, modern-day Ethiopia, to the Abyssinians, or what we call Highlanders. Okay? He signed that formal treaty. The question is why? Because at the time there was insurgency in the Sudan. If you look at the literature, that was the Mahdi army was uprising. So instead of and the British were concerned that the Ethiopians will help the Mahdi army, and so that they have agreed to hand over this land. Instead, for the Ethiopians to agree, they are not going to provide sanctuary to the Mahdi army. In other words, what do we call that today? It's a trade. It's an illegal human trade. Here, have these people on the land. Okay, in return, give me something. Call it whatever other name you want. That's exactly what it was. And that's exactly what the experts have said. Look up if you want. The Somali territory was bargained away to stop Ethiopia from sending help to the Mahdist in Sudan. That is how the West, the British, have responded to those events. People dying, property destroyed, looting, starvation. All that happened. Their response was, here, have the people. You can do that freely. So that's what happened in 1892. Fast forward that to 2008. We're very modern, right? At the time, 1892, we didn't even have an airplane. But 2008, can you imagine that same thing happened? And is it something that I am saying? No. What was described as expedition in 1892 was that's today classified as a war crime or a genocide. Guess what happened in 2008? Human Rights Watch, they had the most detailed report I have ever seen written about the Ogaden. They have even rented or bought pictures from commercial satellite imagery so that they can check what a town looked like before it was destroyed and what it looked like after it was destroyed. And those same pictures and report is found on the Human Rights Watch website. It's well documented. The Canadian government has been made aware. The US government has been made aware. And every other Western government got a copy. Okay? What was in that report? Exactly. Listen to this. There was counterinsurgency. What did they do? They are forcibly moving entire communities. They're raping women. They're killing civilians to terrorize. In one instance, they've executed 150 civilians. And this is what Human Rights Watch are saying. 150 civilians. Okay, although I don't want to get ahead of myself, but do you know how many people were killed that prompted the West, mainly the United States, including our government, to respond to Libya? In Benghazi, 193 people were killed. And the whole world said, okay, no, you gotta stop. So why not? What about the Ogaden? In one instance, we have 150 people. So that is what happened in 2008. Okay? They're still continuing. People are fleeing. Okay? They're going to the neighboring countries. And then they said some of the patterns of violence are ongoing. It didn't end with that report. It's ongoing at the time. Okay? And they said, which is the key, this represents a fraction of the tragedy and the genocide that takes place in Ogaden. A fraction. Okay? Okay? What did the West do? Okay? So the Human Rights Watch is saying these widespread atrocities and systemic atrocities, they amount to war crimes. Did they do anything about it? No. But what is the response of the West? That includes our government. And when I say our government, it's my government too. I am a Canadian. I may not have voted for the government, but that government represents me. What was the response? Human Rights Watch said Washington, London, and Brussels. I was hoping they will add Ottawa. But you can surmise that Ottawa is included. So they seem to maintain a conspiracy of silence around these crimes. So how is the West responding? Silence. So now, if they're not responding, and yet they respond to similar events in somewhere else, am I wrong to claim that is a selective moral? I can't hear you. No. To me, that is a selective moral. But that's exactly what is happening 116 years later. Okay? And by the way, who said that item was? Okay, now let's see what is selectivity in action. Okay? Most people, most experts who know about genocide, who know about war crimes, they all agree what is happening in Darfur is exactly the same thing, if not worse, what is happening in the Ogaden. So you have Darfur, we're not talking about theory, you have Darfur, people are being killed, women are being raped, they're being displaced en masse, and they are targeted because of their ethnicity. That is a genocide, definition of genocide. The same thing happens, if nothing worse, in Ogaden. Yet the West is outraged in Darfur, and they indicted the general there. I say that's fine and dandy, and I agree with it. But what about Meles Zenawi? What about the Ethiopian premier? Okay? The response is not the same. Okay? That's exactly what I said. General al-Bashir of Sudan cannot go and visit Kenya, its neighbor. Yet, we hosted Meles Zenawi 2 years ago, the G20 fiasco here in Toronto. He was here. A month ago, America, or the United States of America, who are advocates when they want to of human rights, they have hosted in Camp David Meles Zenawi. So I asked myself, isn't that selectivity? Well, we're selecting one over the other. So why is Meles Zenawi coming into Western capitals? Why? Okay? In Ogaden, there is a silence. Human rights organizations have to spend whatever little money that they have because they're not given access. They have to rent commercial satellites to take imagery. But what is the West doing in Darfur? They're paying for planes to look for evidence of genocide in Darfur. Are we not human beings? Are the Ogaden Somalis are they not people that we care about? We should. And that is what selectivity in action. means. It's not a theory. Okay? There is not even formal rebuke, let alone do anything. And Milad Zenawi represents the African continent. What a poor continent. Okay? So the Ethiopian regime, in 2008, they killed 150 people in one instance. And in Benghazi, the former dictator, Muammar al-Gaddafi, he killed 193 people in Benghazi. Guess what? The very government of ours that we are hosting you today, we have spent more than $50 million in liberating, rightly liberating, I agree with what they did, the Libyan people. But I say, why do you stop there? Why don't you do the same in Ogaden? I don't think I'm asking for a lot. I'm asking for a consistency. Either do something for everybody or do nothing. Okay? Okay? Now, I like this cartoon. It's the best cartoon that I can find. What you see here, those who don't know Somali, is this is a famous Somali cartoonist, because he looked at the events in Darfur, and he looked at the events in Ogaden, and he says, wait a minute, what's the difference here? And here what you see is Milad Zenawi, you can see, is the guy who's killing the people on the right, and he's writing ONLF. In other words, claiming they're separatists. Okay? And now while he's doing that, that's what the cartoon says, General al-Bashir, who has been indicted for war crimes, he said, hey, my buddy, we're on the same boat. Why are you doing this? Are you not scared that you will be indicted? He said, man, you did the wrong thing. You picked up the wrong victims. You should have picked up the Somalis. Why did you pick up the Darfurians? And I could not describe that selective morality of the West better than that. So, that is mainly what my talk is about. I have defined who is the West. Remember, it's part of you. You are part of the West. Okay? I have also defined what the selective morality is. Yeah, okay, Darfur, okay, what about Ogaden? Sorry. So what did Martin Luther King Jr. said? He said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. In other words, if we don't do anything about the injustice in Ogaden, we're doing nothing about the other injustices everywhere else. In other words, we should do something. Okay? There is no question, and I have no qualms about saying that what is happening in Ogaden is genocide. Period. So, what can we do? We're not helpless victims. I am a Canadian who hails from that region. You are there are many Americans here, there are British here, there is Swedish, there are people from Denmark, Danish citizens, there are British citizens, because this is an annual Ogaden convention. So all of you, everyone in here who is a citizen, is part of that selective morality. Whether your government does that or not, it is your government. So let's do something. What is it that we can do? We can let the world, especially our fellow citizens who do not know about Ogaden tragedy, we can let them know about that tragedy. That's the first thing we can do. And it's not a mistake that I am referring to education to remove a moral hazard. Educate yourself. Knowing what is happening is the first step in stopping anything. The second thing you can do is action starts with you. You and me and your friend and tomorrow his friend and his friend or her friend. That is what a grassroots organization is about. Start a grassroots campaign to bring the plight of the Ogaden Somalis to the TV screens, because in the West, if it ain't in the TV, didn't happen. So let's bring it to the TV. And finally, I'm glad that we have an honorable federal member of parliament. I'm honored that he is here today and he participated and took what is a great day to be outside, to come and stay with us indoors. We appreciate that, but we need to engage our local MPP. Democracy starts at the grassroots, okay? Honorable Mike Sullivan is a federal member of parliament. We will include him and others in our action, but let's start from bottom up, because the federal government is further removed a bit from the action. So engage your local MPP, the MP, and your city councilor about the Ogaden plight. And finally, get involved. I cannot say that enough. Get involved and let the train leave the station with you in it. I don't want to take any more time, but simply what I have described is selectivity in moral outrage. The human beings that I've described in Darfur and Ogaden are the same. We are all equals, regardless of what the cartoonists say, that Mela Zenawi picked up the right victims and General al-Bashir picked up the wrong victims. We are still human beings at the end of the day, so we should do something to put a stop to what the Ethiopian regime is doing in Ogaden. And let's make sure 2 years from now, we will not be talking about the exact same thing that happened 120 years ago. Thank you very much.